listen, practice, speak. Practice makes you perfect.
Today, we're tackling something that often trips people up. English idioms, specifically the ones you hear all the time in business.
It's so true. You could have perfect grammar, great vocabulary, but then someone says, let's touch base. And it throws you off. And the workplace, it's full of them.
Absolutely. So we've dug into a source that really focuses on these common phrases native speakers use, especially at work. Think of this as, well, a practical guide.
Yeah, a way to help you understand what people really mean and maybe feel a bit more confident using these yourself.
Exactly. Our mission is to unpack these idioms, look at their meanings, see how they're used with examples from our source. Why bother? Well, like our source says, even fluent speakers can struggle. And mastering these is key to, sounding natural and getting the full meaning in business talk.
That jump from literal words to the figurative meaning.
Yeah.
That's the tricky part. Our source really highlights this. You hear, give me a ballpark figure.
Right, and they're not talking about baseball, they just want an estimate.
Precisely. Or instead of let's start this project, it's almost always.
Let's get the ball rolling, yeah.
Or waiting for approval becomes waiting for the green light. So these are the kinds of phrases we're going to break down. Okay, let's do it. Let's start with idioms around getting things started, kicking off projects. First up, the one we just mentioned, to get the ball rolling.
Simple enough, it just means to start something, get a process or project going. Often implies you're starting it so others will join in.
Our source had examples like, let's schedule a meeting to get the ball rolling on the new project launch. Makes sense.
Or, once we secure the funding, we can get the ball rolling on the construction. It's all about that first push.
And often, before you can roll any balls, you need permission, right? That brings us to get the green light.
Yeah, exactly like a traffic signal. It means you've got approval, you've got permission to start. Go ahead.
So examples like, the marketing campaign received the green light from the client, and now we can launch it. Or maybe the pharma company finally got the green light to sell their new drug. You'll also just hear people say, we're waiting for the green light from the CEO. It's that go-ahead signal.
But, okay, even with the green light, sometimes things are fuzzy. Plans aren't set. Our source calls this up in the air.
Right. It means undecided, uncertain, not yet determined, just floating.
You hear it all the time. Our plans are up in the air, or our vacation plans are still up in the air because we can't decide where to go.
Yeah, it can be about specifics, like many details are still up in the air, or just everything. I don't know, everything is up in the air right now. Total uncertainty.
And when things are up in the air, you can't really have a detailed plan, so you might need to play it by ear.
Yeah, like improvising. You make decisions as you go, you see how things develop, and then decide what to do next. No fixed plan.
The source had examples like, we don't have specific travel plans, we're just playing it by ear. That sounds familiar.
Or, more businesslike, since the situation is constantly changing, we'll have to play it by ear and adjust our strategy accordingly. Even in meetings. I'm not sure what I'll say, I'll just play it by ear. It's all about being flexible.
Okay, so starting, getting approval, dealing with uncertainty, check. But work isn't always smooth. What about problems? There's that classic one, especially for meetings, the elephant in the room.
Oh yeah, that's a great idiom. It's that big, obvious issue or problem that everyone knows is there, but nobody wants to talk about it.
Because it's awkward or uncomfortable.
Exactly. Uncomfortable, maybe controversial. You worry about the reaction, so it's just ignored, even though it's elephant-sized.
The source examples were pretty clear. During the meeting, no one addressed the elephant in the room. The CEO's involvement in the scandal. Oof.
Yeah. Or maybe more direct, like, why isn't anyone talking about the elephant in the room? He's incompetent.
It could be a big crisis, too. Like, the financial crisis was the elephant in the room that no one wanted to discuss. Until someone finally says,
it's time to talk about the elephant in the room. Forces the issue.
Right. Okay, related to problems, sometimes your whole day feels like just reacting. That's put out fires, right. The source mentions put out, meaning extinguish.
Precisely. So metaphorically, you're spending your time dealing with one urgent crisis after another, extinguishing them as they pop up.
You hear people say, I can't get any real work done. I spend most of my time putting out fires.
Or maybe the IT department was busy putting out fires when the server crashed. It's very reactive, dealing with immediate problems.
And while you're busy with fires or elephants, it's easy to get lost in the weeds, right? To go off on a tangent. The source calls this to go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, from Alice in Wonderland. It means you get sidetracked by interesting but ultimately distracting details. You lose focus on the main thing.
Oh, happens constantly online. While researching, I went down a rabbit hole of related videos.
Definitely. Or in a meeting. We went down the rabbit hole discussing minor issues instead of the main agenda.
Yeah.
It's easy to do, and you just lose track of time.
Okay, but what about when you do address something perfectly? You solve the problem or say exactly the right thing. That's to hit the nail on the head.
Right. It means you're exactly right. Your analysis, your comment, your solution, it's perfectly accurate and relevant, spot on.
Like, your analysis of the market trends really hit the nail on the head.
Or describing someone. You hit the nail on the head about him, he is dishonest. Even a doctor's diagnosis can hit the nail on the head. It just means perfect accuracy.
But sometimes, despite trying, you fall behind. You're not keeping up. That's when you find yourself having to play catch up.
Yeah, it means you're behind, maybe behind competitors, behind schedule, behind on your workload, and you're making an effort to reach the level you should be at.
So, after falling behind schedule, the team is now playing catch up to meet the deadline.
Or comparing companies.
Mm-hmm.
Our company's playing catch up with competitors who've already adopted new tech. It can feel like a constant struggle for some people. I always feel like I'm playing catch up.
Okay, let's shift from problems to the work itself, effort, thoroughness, that kind of thing. A common one for praising effort is to go the extra mile.
Right. It means doing more than what's expected or required, putting in that additional effort, really trying hard.
It's definitely seen as a good thing. She always goes the extra mile for customers.
Or personally, he's always going the extra mile for his friends. It often gets linked to success. This project worked because the team was willing to go the extra mile.
And for work that needs precision, we often hear to cross the T's and dot the I's.
Comes right from the act of writing, making sure those little details are perfect. It means being meticulous, paying close attention to every single small detail, especially when finishing something.
The source mentioned legal contexts. Before submitting the contract, the legal team crossed the T's and dotted the I's. Makes sense there.
Absolutely. Or describing someone. She's known for her attention to detail. Always takes the time to cross the T's and dot the I's in her reports. It implies carefulness and accuracy.
And if you want to be really thorough, cover every possibility. You need to cover all the bases.
Yeah, like in baseball, making sure every base is covered. It means considering every possible angle, doing everything necessary to make sure something is successful or complete. No gaps.
So, our procedures cover all the bases to ensure safety.
Or, the legal team reviewed the contract thoroughly to make sure it was covering all the bases. You might hear a manager check, are we covering all the bases here? Just making sure nothing's missed.
And while you're covering bases, you want everyone working together, right, on the same wavelength. That's to be on the same page.
Exactly. It means everyone involved understands things the same way, agrees on the goals, or has the same information, essential for teamwork.
You might say, let's have a quick meeting to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Or just ask directly, are we all on the same page? And if not, you might point it out, I don't think we're on the same page regarding this topic. It's all about shared understanding.
Okay, let's pivot a bit. Let's talk about idioms related to strategy, creativity, risk, that side of business. A really popular one is to think outside the box.
Ah, yes. This means thinking creatively, originally, not being limited by the usual assumptions or methods, coming up with new unconventional ideas.
Which is highly valued in business,
Yeah.
right? For innovation.
Definitely. So to solve this complex problem, you'll have to think outside the box. Or instead of the usual approach, let's think outside the box. People who do this are called out-of-the-box thinkers.
And when you think outside the box, you might create something that's cutting edge.
Right. That means the newest, most advanced, most innovative, at the forefront of technology or development.
Like, this smartphone has a cutting-edge design.
Or we need to stay updated on the latest cutting-edge developments. You can also say a company is on the cutting edge, means they're leading the way.
Now, strategically, sometimes the best move is the easiest one first. That's called low-hanging fruit. Or, to pick low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, literally the fruit that's easiest to reach on a tree. Metaphorically, it's the easiest tasks, the quickest wins, the opportunities that require the least effort for a decent return.
So, to increase sales, let's focus on picking the low-hanging fruit by targeting existing customers, because that's easier than finding new ones.
Exactly. Or, for a project, let's pick the low-hanging fruit first, to show some progress quickly, before tackling the harder parts. It's about getting easy wins.
But while picking easy fruit is okay sometimes, you generally don't want to put all your eggs in one basket.
Classic advice. It means don't rely entirely on one single thing, one strategy, one investment, one client, one plan, because if that one thing fails...
You lose everything. Diversify your risk.
Precisely. Crucial in finance. Don't put all your eggs in one basket when investing. Same for a job search. I'm applying for several jobs because I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket.
And when you're thinking strategy, you need perspective. Not just the details, but the overall view. You need to see the big picture or to get the big picture.
Right. It means understanding the whole situation, the overall context, the main goal, not just getting lost in the minor details or immediate tasks.
So someone might understand the steps, but he missed the big picture, meaning the overall purpose.
Or you might tell someone, stand back and take a look at the big picture. Get some perspective.
Okay, moving towards, let's say, results, decisions, the nitty-gritty outcomes. Everyone talks about the bottom line.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is fundamental. It means the final result, the most important factor, the ultimate consequence. In business, it often literally means the net profit or loss.
But it's used more broadly too, right? Like the bottom line is he's gone, meaning that's the crucial final fact.
Exactly. Or the bottom line is we don't have the money. That's the deciding factor. In business strategy, let's not lose sight of the bottom line, which is increasing market share.
Sure.
You also hear, let's get to the bottom line, meaning...
Get to the main point. Cut the fluff.
Right. And speaking of getting to the point and making a decision, sometimes you just have to pull the trigger.
It comes from firing a gun, obviously. Metaphorically, it means making that final decision, committing to action, especially after hesitating or thinking for a long time.
You might hear someone impatiently say, you've been thinking about this for ages, just pull the trigger.
Or she finally pulled the trigger and quit her job, making that big move.
In business, it's time to pull the trigger on launching the new product. Stop deliberating, just do it. The source even had that exasperated tone. What are you waiting for? Pull the trigger.
Okay. Now, some outcomes aren't so great. A very blunt one for losing your job is to get the axe.
Yeah, pretty direct. It means getting fired, losing your job. Our source mentioned it can be spelled axe or axe.
You hear it like several employees got the axe due to budget cuts.
Or he was shocked when he got the axe.
Okay.
It can also be a warning. If you keep showing up late, you're going to get the axe.
And on a similar down note, making a big mistake, messing up at a crucial moment, to drop the ball.
Right. Like fumbling a ball in sports. Yeah. It means you failed to do something important, made a mistake through carelessness or inaction, often causing negative consequences.
So he dropped the ball on the project by missing the deadline. That's a clear failure.
Or we dropped the ball when we failed to follow up with the client and we lost the contract. Big consequences. It can even apply to organizations.
Yep.
The agency dropped the ball on disaster preparedness.
And people might say it directly. You really dropped the ball on this one.
Yeah, or stress the need to avoid it. We can't afford to drop the ball again.
Now, the reality for many people is just juggling too much. The idiom for that is to have a lot on my plate.
Very common. It means you have a large amount of work, responsibilities, or problems to deal with right now. Your metaphorical plate is full.
Like, as a small business owner, he constantly has a lot on his plate.
Or personally. She has kids, a job, studying. She has a lot on her plate. It's also a very common reason for being busy or unavailable. Sorry, I didn't call back. I've had a lot on my plate.
And when people do have a lot on their plate, or maybe they just want to save money or time, they might to cut corners.
This means doing something in the cheapest, quickest, or easiest way possible, often by sacrificing quality, ignoring rules, or skipping necessary steps, taking shortcuts.
And usually it shows, right? The quality isn't as good. They're cutting corners to save money.
Exactly. Or cutting corners on your workout won't help you reach your goals when building things. They were criticized for cutting corners on the house. The result is often obvious. They cut corners, and it shows.
So the advice is often, don't cut corners if you want a perfect job.
Right. Don't compromise on quality or standards.
We mentioned ballpark figure way back at the start. Let's quickly circle back. Now we're talking estimates and outcomes.
Yeah, good idea. So a ballpark figure is just an approximate estimate, a rough guess. Not exact numbers needed, just something in the general vicinity in the right ballpark.
Like, I don't need the exact cost, just give me a ballpark figure.
Or clarifying, the initial estimate was just a ballpark figure, and asking directly, can you give me a ballpark figure for the renovation cost? You might also say an estimate is in the ballpark if it seems reasonable or close.
Okay. And finally, looking towards the future, a phrase you hear constantly in business planning. Going forward.
Very common. It simply means in the future, from this point on, looking ahead. It often signals a change, a new plan, or a future intention.
So, going forward, let's try to improve communication. Setting a future goal.
Or discussing plans. We need to decide what we're doing going forward and making predictions. We expect sales to increase going forward. It just marks that shift to future actions or expectations.
Wow, okay. We really covered a lot of ground there. From, getting things started with, get the ball rolling and get the green light.
To handling uncertainty when things are up in the air by deciding to play it by ear.
We talked about tackling problems, the awkward elephant in the room, or the constant putting out fires.
And aiming for creative solutions by thinking outside the box and hoping to hit the nail on the head.
Then there was the effort involved. Going the extra mile, being meticulous to cross the T's and dot the I's, making sure you cover all the bases.
And keeping everyone aligned on the same page.
We looked at strategy, too. Grabbing low-hanging fruit, seeing the big picture, not putting all your eggs in one basket, and striving to be cutting edge.
And finally, outcomes and decisions, focusing on the bottom line, deciding when to pull the trigger, dealing with negative stuff like getting the axe or dropping the ball.
Managing when you have a lot on your plate, trying not to cut corners, and figuring out what happens going forward.
It's quite a list. But honestly, getting comfortable with these idioms, it's so valuable. It really does help you understand the subtext in business conversations and just participate more naturally.
It feels like it bridges that gap, doesn't it, between just knowing the words and knowing how people actually talk.
Absolutely. It's less like reading a textbook and more like being part of the real conversation.
And connecting this to the bigger picture, it's fascinating how these little phrases act almost like cultural shorthand. They're not just about meaning. They kind of reveal attitudes.
That's a great point. How a culture talks about starting projects or dealing with problems or taking risks. It's embedded in these idioms.
Yeah.
Think about putting out fires versus maybe a more proactive idiom. It says something.
It really does. So final thought for you to consider. What other parts of communication use this kind of shorthand? And how does learning it change not just your language, but maybe how you see and interact with the professional world going forward?
Definitely something to mull over.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.
Today we're tackling something, something that can make even pretty experienced English speakers pause a bit. The wonderful, sometimes weird world of idioms, especially in business talk.
It's so true. You might have really solid grammar, great vocabulary, but then native speakers use these phrases and the individual words just don't add up to the meaning. And in the workplace, they're absolutely everywhere.
Exactly. So we've done a deep dive into a transcript that focuses on these common idiomatic expressions, the kind native speakers use all the time, especially in professional settings.
Think of this as a bit of a shortcut, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. A shortcut to help you not just figure out what's being said, but also, feel a bit more comfortable maybe using these phrases yourself. Our mission today is basically to unpack these expressions, understand what they really mean, see how they work in context, using examples straight from our source material.
And it's important, right? Because the source we looked at really highlights this. These little phrases, they're actually key to sounding more natural.
And understanding the full picture in business conversations. It's that jump from literal to figurative meaning. That's the tricky part.
Precisely. That's what our source points out as a core difficulty.
Yeah.
You can know every single word and say, give me a ballpark figure, but if you don't know the idiom...
You've got no idea. They just want an estimate.
Right, exactly.
Or instead of hearing, we need to get started on this project, you're much more likely to hear.
We need to get the ball rolling. Much more common.
And waiting for approval. It's not just waiting for the boss to approve it.
It's often waiting for the boss to give us the green light. Yeah, these are exactly the kinds of expressions we're going to dig into. We've sort of grouped them by how they often pop up in the workflow.
Okay, sounds good. Let's unpack this then. Let's start with expressions around getting projects going, navigating those early steps. First one up, like we just said, to get the ball rolling.
Right. And this just means starting something, a process, a project. It's about initiating that first action, often, hoping to get others to jump in too.
Okay. And the source gives examples like, let's schedule a meeting to get the ball rolling on the new project launch. Makes sense.
Or once we secure the funding, we can get the ball rolling on the construction project. It's all about that initial momentum, getting things moving.
Got it. And sometimes, before you can even think about rolling any balls, you need permission.
Right, absolutely. That's
Yeah.
where to get the green light comes in.
Ah, like a traffic signal. So it means getting the approval, permission to start.
Exactly that. The examples are pretty clear. The marketing campaign received the green light from the client, and now we can launch it.
Okay.
Or the pharmaceutical company finally got the green light to sell their new drug. And you'll definitely hear people say things like, we're waiting for the green light from the CEO. It just signals, permission granted. Go ahead.
But even with a green light, things aren't always set in stone, are they? Sometimes plans are just completely undecided. Or, like the source says, up in the air.
This describes a situation that's, well, not decided yet. It's not certain if it'll happen or the details haven't been determined. It just signifies uncertainty.
Right. So you might hear, our plans are up in the air. Or maybe more specific, our vacation plans are still up in the air because we can't decide where to go.
Yeah, and it can apply broadly, too. Many details are still up in the air, or even just a vague, I don't know. Everything is up in the air at this point.
And when things are up in the air like that, making a rigid plan is tough.
Impossible sometimes.
So that's when you might decide to play it by ear.
Ah, yes. Like improvising in music. It means you make decisions as you go, without a fixed plan. You decide what to do based on how the situation unfolds.
Okay. So the source gives examples like, we don't have specific travel plans, we're just playing it by ear.
Or in a changing situation, since the situation is constantly changing, we'll have to play it by ear and adjust our strategy accordingly.
You might even say it about a meeting, right? I'm not sure what I'll say at the meeting, I'll just play it by ear. It's all about being flexible.
Exactly. Flexibility is key there.
Okay, so we've talked about starting, dealing with uncertainty. But, business isn't always smooth sailing. What about idioms for when you hit problems or challenges? There's a big one, especially for meetings. The elephant in the room.
Oh, yeah, that's a fantastic image, isn't it? It refers to that really obvious problem or issue. Everyone knows it's there, but nobody's talking about it.
Usually because it's uncomfortable or people are worried about reactions.
Precisely. It's that important, really awkward topic that everyone's just avoiding.
The source examples are pretty direct here.
Yeah.
During the meeting, no one addressed the elephant in the room, the CEO's involvement in the scandal.
Yeah, or even more bluntly, why isn't anyone talking about the elephant in the room? He's incompetent. He needs to step down.
Wow. It can be a major crisis, too. Like in the corporate meeting, the financial crisis was the elephant in the room that no one wanted to discuss.
And sometimes someone just has to bite the bullet and say, right, it's time to talk about the elephant in the room. Force the issue.
Yeah, force the issue. And speaking of problems, sometimes your whole day feels like just reacting to them, one after another.
Ah, you mean to put out fires? The source reminds us put out literally means extinguish, like a fire.
Right. So metaphorically, in the workplace, it means you're just constantly dealing with urgent problems, crises, as they flare up.
Exactly. It describes that very reactive state. The examples really show this. I can't get any real work done. I spend most of my time putting out fires. That sounds frustrating.
Definitely. Or the IT department was busy putting out fires when the server crashed.
Yeah.
Dealing with the immediate crisis.
And while you're busy putting out fires or even just trying to focus, it's easy to get sidetracked, isn't it? To get lost in details that aren't really relevant.
You mean like to go down the rabbit hole?
Exactly. That image from Alice in Wonderland, it means getting diverted into like really complex or distracting details, and you often lose track of what you were originally trying to do or just lose track of time.
Happens so easily online, right? While researching a topic online, I often find myself going down a rabbit hole of related articles and videos. Guilty.
Oh, me too. And in meetings, it can be really counterproductive. During the meeting, we went down the rabbit hole of discussing minor issues instead of focusing on the main agenda.
Yeah, the source warns it's easy to go down the rabbit hole and to lose track of time. You need to stay focused.
But on the positive side, when you do successfully tackle a problem, or you say something that's exactly right.
To hit the nail on the head.
Precisely. It means doing or saying something that is absolutely correct, identifying or addressing something accurately. Spot on.
Like if an analysis is perfect, your analysis of the market trends really hit the nail on the head.
Or describing someone accurately, maybe too accurately. You hit the nail on the head about him. He is dishonest and manipulative.
Ouch. Even a doctor's diagnosis. The doctor's diagnosis hit the nail on the head. It just signals complete accuracy.
It does. Now, sometimes, despite all your best efforts, things just fall behind schedule.
Yeah, that happens. And that's when you might find yourself having to play catch up.
Right. It means you're trying to reach the same level or position as your competitors, or maybe just catch up on your own deadlines after falling behind. It's that effort to keep up.
The examples really capture that feeling of struggle. After falling behind schedule, the team is now playing catch up to meet the deadline.
It applies to bigger things, too, like technology. Our company is playing catch up with competitors who have already adopted new technology. Notice the spelling variation there. Catch up. Interesting. Though, catch up is standard.
Huh, yeah. And for some people, it feels constant. I always feel like I'm playing catch up or catch up.
Always behind. Okay, let's shift from problems more towards the work itself. Idioms about effort, thoroughness, a really common one for describing someone who does more than required is to go the extra mile.
Right. This means putting in that additional effort, doing more than expected, trying just that little bit harder, even after you've already put in the work.
And it's usually seen as a really positive trait. She always goes the extra mile to provide exceptional customer service. That's highly valued.
Or even in personal life, he's always going the extra mile for his friends.
And it often explains why something succeeded. This project was successful because the team was willing to go the extra mile. That extra effort paid off.
And for work that requires a lot of attention to detail, we often hear to cross the T's and dot the I's.
Yeah, this comes straight from the literal action of writing, right? Making sure those tiny details, the dot on the I, the cross on the T, are perfect. It means paying super careful attention to every little detail when you're finishing something, ensuring accuracy, completeness.
The source uses legal examples, which seems fitting. Before submitting the contract, the legal team crossed the T's and dotted the I's to ensure there were no errors. Very important there.
Absolutely. And it's used to describe meticulous people. She's known for her attention to detail and always takes the time to cross the T's and dot the I's in her reports.
Okay. And to be really thorough, maybe on a bigger project, you need to cover all the bases.
This means doing everything necessary to make sure something is successful. Or, making sure every possible angle, every aspect has been considered. No gaps left.
The source examples show that kind of comprehensive approach. Our procedures cover all the bases to ensure the safety of our employees.
Or again, with contracts, the legal team reviewed the contract thoroughly to make sure it was covering all the bases. You might even hear a manager ask the team, okay, are we covering all the bases here? Just to double check.
Right, make sure nothing's missed. And while you're covering all those bases, you want the whole team working together smoothly. You want everyone to be on the same page.
Yes, this is crucial. It means everyone involved is in agreement, they're thinking similarly, they share the same understanding or goals. If you're on the same page, you can work together effectively.
So you might suggest, let's schedule a meeting to make sure that everyone is on the same page, just to align everyone.
Or ask directly, maybe during a discussion, are we all on the same page? Checking for shared understanding.
And if there's disagreement,
You might state it clearly. I don't think we're on the same page regarding this topic. It flags a misalignment that needs resolving. It's all about that shared understanding.
makes sense. Okay, let's pivot a bit now to idioms about strategy, risk, maybe different ways of looking at business. A really valued approach, especially in innovation, is to think outside the box.
Right, we touched on this briefly earlier. It means thinking creatively, originally, not being limited by the usual rules or conventional ways of doing things. In business, it's often seen as essential for finding new ideas, for innovation.
Yeah, the source gives good examples. To solve this complex problem, you'll have to think outside the box. It implies the usual methods won't work.
Or, instead of following the usual approach, we should think outside the box to find a solution. And someone who does this naturally.
They're an out-of-the-box thinker. Like,
Good.
her ability to think outside the box makes her a valuable asset to the company.
Absolutely. And thinking outside the box can lead to products or methods that are really advanced.
You mean cutting edge?
Exactly. This describes something that's the very newest, the most advanced, innovative, leading its field, especially common when talking about technology or new methodologies.
So you might say, this smartphone features a cutting-edge design.
Or talk about staying current. Stay updated on the latest cutting-edge developments in the industry. And you could also say a company itself is on the cutting edge of its field, pushing the boundaries.
Okay. Now, when you're thinking strategy, sometimes the smartest initial move is to go for the easiest wins first.
Ah, you're talking about the low-hanging fruit, or the action to pick low-hanging fruit.
Right. It means something that's really easy to get or achieve. So picking the low-hanging fruit is doing the most obvious, easiest things first to get some quick success or make initial progress. Minimal effort, maximum initial return, kind of?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The source uses a sales example. To increase sales, let's focus on picking the low-hanging fruit by targeting existing customers, because that's usually easier than finding new ones.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Or for a project. Before working on the more challenging aspects, the team decided to pick the low-hanging fruit to make progress and maybe build some momentum or confidence.
Good strategy sometimes. But while picking low-hanging fruit can be smart, there's a general piece of advice about risk.
You mean to put all your eggs in one basket? Or rather, don't do that.
Exactly. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. It's classic advice, meaning, don't rely entirely on just one strategy or one option or one investment. Because if that single thing fails...
You risk losing everything.
Yeah.
Crucial in finance, right? When you're planning your investments, it's unwise to put all your eggs in one basket. Diversify.
Absolutely. Or even in a job search. I'm applying for several jobs because I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. It's just about spreading the risk.
Smart. And when you're deep in strategy, or maybe just dealing with complex problems, it's important not to get lost in the tiny details.
Right. You need to maintain perspective. You need to see the big picture, or to get the big picture.
This means understanding the overall situation, the whole perspective, the main idea, rather than getting bogged down in minor points.
The source gives a good contrasting example. He understood the details, but he missed the big picture. He couldn't see the forest for the trees, maybe.
Right, or advising someone to zoom out. Stand back and take a look at the big picture, get that broader perspective.
Okay, let's move towards outcomes, making decisions, and some of the maybe harsher realities of the workplace. A really key outcome everyone focuses on, especially in business, is the bottom line.
Ah, yes, the bottom line. This phrase means the main point, the most crucial factor, the final result, especially financial profit in business. It's what really matters in the end.
Exactly. The source gives both general and business examples. General. The bottom line is he's gone and he's not coming back. Just the essential fact.
Or the bottom line is we don't have the money to pay for it. The ultimate constraint.
And in a business meeting, let's not lose sight of the bottom line, which is to increase our market share. The key objective. You can also use it to cut through discussion. Okay, let's get to the bottom line, meaning let's focus on the main point now.
Right, cut to the chase. And speaking of getting to the point and making final decisions, especially after hesitating.
You need to pull the trigger.
Yeah, this one clearly comes from the literal action, right?
Yeah.
Metaphorically, it means making that final decision, committing to action, especially after you've been thinking about it for a while.
Exactly. It captures that moment of committing. The examples show this. You've been wasting your time trying to make a decision. I wish you would just pull a trigger. Shows a bit of impatience there.
Yeah. Or she'd been considering a career change for a while and finally pulled the trigger by quitting her current job. Taking the leap.
And in business, it's time to pull the trigger on launching the new product. Make the call. The source even adds that exasperated tone. You've been talking about this for years. What are you waiting for? It's time to pull the trigger. Just do it.
Okay, so that's making the decision. But not all outcomes are positive. There's a pretty blunt idiom for losing your job.
You mean to get the axe?
Yeah, pretty harsh image. It just means to get fired, to lose your job. The source notes the spelling can be axe or axe.
And it's used straightforwardly. Several employees got the axe due to budget cuts.
Or describing someone's reaction. He was shocked when he got the axe. It can also be a warning, right? If you keep showing up late, you're going to get the axe.
Definitely a warning. Now, on a similar negative note, sometimes it's not about losing your job, but about making a really significant mistake, missing a crucial opportunity.
That's when you just have dropped the ball.
Exactly. Comes from sports, obviously. It means making a mistake, messing up, failing to do something important, especially by not taking action when you should have. It implies carelessness or failure at a key moment.
The source gives examples of pretty serious failures. He dropped the ball on the project by missing the deadline. That's major.
Or we dropped the ball when we failed to follow up with the client and we lost the contract. Big consequences. It can even apply to large organizations. It was clear that the government agency had dropped the ball on disaster preparedness.
Wow. And you might hear it used directly, maybe critically. You really dropped the ball on this one.
Yeah, or emphasizing the need to avoid it repeating, we can't afford to drop the ball a second time, the stakes are high.
Okay. Now, a common reality for many people in business, especially managers or entrepreneurs, is just having way too much to do.
Ah, the feeling of being overwhelmed. That's described by, I have a lot on my plate.
Right? Your metaphorical plate is piled high with tasks, problems, responsibilities. You're just dealing with a large amount of work.
Exactly. The examples show how broad it is. As a small business owner, he constantly has a lot on his plate. It's just the nature of the job.
Applies personally, too. She has children, a full-time job, and she's studying for a test. She has a lot on her plate. That's definitely a lot.
For sure. And it's often used as a simple explanation for being busy, or maybe unresponsive. I'm sorry I didn't return your call. I've had a lot on my plate recently.
Understandable. Now, when people do have a lot on their plate, or maybe they're just trying to save time or money, there's a temptation sometimes.
You mean to cut corners?
Exactly. This means doing something in the cheapest or easiest way possible. But crucially, it usually implies taking shortcuts that compromise quality, or skip important details, or lower standards, all to save time or money.
And the results often show. The source gives examples where quality clearly suffers. The quality isn't as good as it used to be. They're cutting corners to try to save money.
It applies outside business too. Cutting corners on your workout routine won't help you achieve your fitness goals. You cheat yourself.
Or when building standards are ignored. They were criticized for cutting corners when building the house. That can be dangerous. The source adds, they cut corners and it shows.
And advises against it for important work. Don't cut corners if you want to do a perfect job. Quality matters.
Absolutely. Okay, we mentioned ballpark figure way back at the start. Let's just quickly circle back to that one now that we've talked about outcomes and estimates. Ballpark figure.
Right, so just to recap, it's an approximate estimate. You use it when you don't know the exact number, or maybe you don't need it. It just gives you a general idea, puts you in the right ballpark.
Exactly. The source examples confirm this. I don't need an exact price, just give me a ballpark figure.
Or describing an initial estimate. The initial estimate was just a ballpark figure, implying it wasn't precise.
And the direct request. Can you give me a ballpark figure for the cost of renovating the office? Just looking for a rough idea. And like you said, you can also say an estimate is in the ballpark if it seems reasonably close.
Got it. Okay, one last one. Very common in business planning and looking ahead, going forward.
Yes. Very common. This simple phrase just means in the future or looking ahead from this point onward. It often signals a shift, a new approach, a new plan, a commitment to do things differently from now on.
Right, so it's used to introduce future plans or changes. Going forward, let's make an effort to improve our communication, like starting now.
Or when discussing future strategy, we need to figure out what we're going to do going forward. Planning the next steps.
And making predictions or stating expectations, we expect sales to increase going forward due to our new marketing strategy. It just clearly marks that shift in time and focus to the future.
It's a neat little transition phrase, really.
Wow, okay, so we've actually covered a huge range there, from getting things started with get the ball rolling and needing the green light,
To dealing with uncertainty by playing it by ear when things are up in the air.
we looked at tackling problems, the big uncomfortable ones like the elephant in the room, or the constant little ones like putting out fires.
And trying to find solutions by thinking outside the box, hoping to hit the nail on the head.
We talked about effort, like going the extra mile, being meticulous by crossing the T's and dotting the I's, and ensuring completeness by covering all the bases.
All while trying to keep everyone on the same page. Super important.
Then strategy, finding that low-hanging fruit, but not putting all your eggs in one basket, always trying to see the big picture and stay cutting edge.
And finally, those outcomes and decisions, focusing on the bottom line, deciding when to pull the trigger.
While facing the less pleasant stuff like potentially getting the axe, or the consequences of dropping the ball, or just managing when you have a lot on your plate, and resisting the urge to cut corners, all while figuring out what happens going forward.
You know, getting comfortable with these idioms is actually incredibly valuable. It really does help you understand the nuances, the subtleties in business conversations, and helps you participate more fluently.
It feels like it bridges that gap, doesn't it? Between knowing the textbook English words and knowing how the language is actually used day to day.
Exactly. It makes you sound more natural and helps you understand what others really mean.
It really is like unlocking a deeper level of communication and connecting this back to the bigger picture. It's interesting to think about how these seemingly simple phrases are almost like cultural shorthand, you know?
That's a great way to put it. Shorthand. They don't just convey a literal meaning, they often reveal underlying attitudes. Attitudes towards work, towards problems, towards making decisions.
Yeah, how we talk about solving problems, putting out fires, or taking risks, pulling the trigger, not putting all eggs in one basket, or even just starting something, get the ball rolling. It does say a lot about shared values or assumptions in a workplace, maybe even a culture.
It's fascinating how much is packed into these little phrases. It's not just vocabulary, it's context, it's culture, it's nuance.
Definitely. So maybe a final thought for you listening. Think about where else communication uses this kind of shorthand, and how learning it doesn't just add words, but maybe fundamentally changes how you understand and interact with the world,
Mm.
going forward.
Something definitely worth thinking about.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.
So today we're plunging into, well, frankly, one of the biggest questions there is. Consciousness and the brain, how they connect.
Always a huge topic.
Yeah, and our source material for this deep dive is it's some video content specifically titled Excerpts from Understanding Consciousness and the Brain.
Okay.
Okay, let's unpack this. The mission here is basically to see what these specific bits, these excerpts, can tell us about this super complex relationship.
And what's fascinating here is right away, the source focus is now. It's about understanding consciousness by looking at the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So it grounds the whole thing in, the physical, the biology. It acknowledges it's a massive challenge, but points down a specific road.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about it for a sec, you listening now. What comes to mind when you try to, grasp how your feeling of being you comes from, well, the stuff inside your skull?
It feels almost impossible sometimes.
It really does. Sort of feels magical, doesn't it? And this source, just from the title, starts tackling that by saying, right, let's look at the brain itself.
Precisely. So the core idea that the source seems to be pushing is that exploring that physical link, the actual interplay between our experience and what's happening neuron-wise.
Mm.
That's fundamental.
Right. To making any real progress in understanding consciousness.
Yeah, to just, studying the brain gives us the clues. We find the evidence there for the nature of awareness itself.
Okay, so digging into these excerpts.
Yeah.
What specific nuggets do they offer about that link? One thing the source apparently gets into is the idea of neural correlates of consciousness, NCCs.
Right, NCCs. The source explains them as basically the minimum brain activity that's needed for any single conscious experience.
Okay, minimum activity,
Like, think about seeing the color red.
Yeah.
When you're consciously aware of red, there's a specific pattern of firing in your brain. That pattern, or maybe a set of patterns, that's the neural correlate for redness.
Yep.
And the source, it seems, highlights the research trying to pin down these brain states that reliably pop up with awareness and, crucially, don't pop up with unconscious processing.
Okay. That's where it gets really interesting, isn't it? The source points out, finding these NCCs, it doesn't automatically explain why that activity feels red, the whole hard problem.
Exactly. It doesn't solve the why.
It gives us something solid, something biological we can actually study that happens right alongside the conscious feeling. It's like a foothold.
A biological anchor. And the source apparently goes further, discussing specific brain bits often involved, like networks connecting the cerebral cortex and the thalamus.
The big wrinkly part in the relay station?
Sort of, yeah. It suggests these areas aren't just crunching data passively. They're integrated activity, as the excerpts discuss. That seems key for bringing stuff into your conscious awareness.
So, complex tasks might use lots of brain areas, but the source implies it's the way they work together, maybe activity reaching, say, the prefrontal cortex, that lines up with you knowing you're doing the task.
That seems to be the idea presented. It's not just which bit is active, but how it's acted, how it's all hooked up and talking to each other. The source seems to frame consciousness as maybe an emergent thing.
Emergent.
Yeah, something that arises from this complex, integrated dance of neural activity in specific widespread systems.
Okay, so not just one consciousness spot.
Exactly. The source emphasizes that. It's likely not in one place, but comes from this dynamic interaction across networks, maybe coordinated by structures like the thalamus, acting as a hub.
A central relay.
Right. The excerpts seem to walk us through the evidence suggesting this kind of integrated network activity is what pushes processing over the line from unconscious to conscious. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, Yeah. This whole approach, exploring consciousness through the brain, like the source does with NCC's networks, it's just a massive scientific quest. It's trying to bridge that gap, right?
Yeah.
Between objective brain stuff and subjective, what it feels like stuff. What people call it the hard problem.
Yeah.
The source gives us these specific examples, NCC's network dynamics, showing how researchers are trying to actually build that bridge, brick by biological brick, you could say.
Which is why sources like this, even just excerpts, are so valuable. They take this giant abstract idea and show us concrete ways scientists are trying to get a handle on it. Gives us specific terms, specific brain areas to think about. It helps frame the, the scientific approach to something that can feel almost mystical.
Definitely helps ground it, which raises an important question, I think, building right off the source's focus.
Okay.
If the source is all about understanding consciousness by finding brain correlates in network activity, does that imply that if we completely understood the brain, every neuron, every connection, would that automatically mean we fully understand consciousness itself? Is that the whole story? Or, are there other aspects, maybe something fundamental about subjective experience that a purely physical description might just miss?
Whoa. Okay. That really makes you pause. Is consciousness only what the brain does? Is brain activity truly the same thing as consciousness?
It's the big question hanging over the field.
Definitely something to keep pondering, as you go about your day. Is my brain activity equal to my experience? Thanks for diving deep with us on this one.